Hello and welcome to Carnivore Wellness. My name is Rebecca. Today I want to share with you my latest experience with fasting for the healing of insulin resistance and for weight loss. It's finally happening for me, and I want to share this piece of what I have been trying out lately because some of you may find it helpful. I just want to throw this out there at the beginning. If you're new to your healing journey, this video is probably not for you. If you have been carnivore for quite some time, if you have tried different methods of troubleshooting where you are and how to feel your best and how to get the results that you want, then stay tuned. There may be some nuggets of wisdom in here for you. In this video, I'm going to share with you a brief history of my experience with fasting, and then I'll move on to how I accidentally backed my way into a 72-hour fast. And then part 3, I want to talk about my experience with a recent 5-day fast and what that did for me. And then lastly, I want to wrap it up by talking about my plan moving forward to remain in a fasting lifestyle that is hormonally supportive of my hormones. And you'll see why that's so important as I get into this next part. So my history with fasting. I came to carnivore and, I struggled to become fat adapted because I followed that commonplace advice of eat until you're comfortably stuffed. For me, comfortably stuffed did not happen at a reasonable amount of food. I have a history of binge eating, emotional eating, and I've been a lifelong sugar burner, sugar addict. And essentially in eating so much and not having high enough ratios of fat to protein, I was eating so much protein that my body was instead of switching over into fat burning, it was taking that excess protein and shuttling it into sugar via the process of gluconeogenesis. So my body continued to run on sugar in a very inefficient way. It's not efficient to make sugar from protein, so the body doesn't do that any more than it has to. But I had this background of, being a lifelong sugar burner, and I also had a lot of insulin resistance. So this excess protein turned into excess sugar, and it kept this insulin resistance piece alive and well in my body. And that really made it a struggle for me. I had things like fatigue, very low energy, low mental clarity, always feeling very sleepy after meals, needing daily naps for quite an extended time after starting carnivore. And looking back now, I really think that is attributed to the fact that I was eating more protein than my body needed. Oftentimes, the recommended amount of protein is 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. For me at 5'7", that is about 135 pounds, therefore 135 grams of protein per day. I was well in excess of that for so much of my carnivore journey. That's okay. I've learned a lot from it, and I'm here to share a little bit of that with you. In my early days on carnivore, I was part of a community that taught a feasting and fasting protocol. And while I got so much out of this community, and I really appreciate how much it supported me in those early days as I was struggling so much, I tried to do the fasting, and I consistently found myself coming up against a wall. I wasn't becoming fat adapted because I was having so much protein. I was following that common advice of eating until comfortably stuffed. And for me, that was too much protein. So when I tried to do the OMADs, I couldn't do them. And, anything longer, of course, was off the table for me. So I continued to just nourish my body, honor my hunger, eat until satiety for about 7 or so months. And then finally, I came to a point where I said, I'm well enough into carnivore. I healed my hormones. My digestive health was regulated. I had alleviated all anxiety and depression. I felt really good, but at that time I'd put on several pounds of fat. I hadn't stepped on a scale, so I don't know what, that increase was, but I had increased in my clothing size, and I'd certainly put on a lot of excess fat, mostly around my belly, my abdomen area, and that was frustrating. So I was really ready to lean into a fasting protocol, and I thought I was ready. So I launched into this protocol, and it went well at first, because when I first started the protocol, I was in the first start of my hormonal cycle. So, day 1 to day 14 leading up to ovulation, that's a gangbusters time to, break out and try some new things. Your hunger is naturally lower, so that worked really well. But as the month proceeded, I continued to get into longer and longer fasts. 36-hour fast, rolling 36-hour fast, a 48-hour fast. And I very quickly realized that I had pushed myself too far. I tanked on the fasting, and I tried to go back to it. I refed for several days. I tried to go back to it. I absolutely couldn't. I really, really struggled, and I just briefly want to touch on what this looked like for me. I had a return of anxiety and depression. I had a return of cravings for non-carnivore foods, along with an unmitigated hunger, raging appetite. It was so wild. I could not get enough to eat. And then I also had sleeplessness, insomnia. I had hormonal acne breaking out all over my neck, chest, back. Oh, it just painful and clearly driven from a hormonal imbalance, and hair loss. And then, of course, weight gain because I was eating so much food and was not in a good place hormonally. So this was really a big challenge for me. I've made a previous video about it. If you want to dive into that, go check that out. I can even link that for you down below, that video on overfasting and how that really was not good for me. It took me about 6 months to recover. I did recover. I stayed carnivore. I got back to that carnivore zen, carnivore calm, all these beautiful healing elements that I'd experienced before returned. Ooh, but it took some perseverance to get through that really rough stretch that resulted from the overfasting. Now, what's so wild to me is during that time, during that month, I read this book by Dr. Mindy Pell's Fast Like a Girl. In it, she talks about how we can cycle our fasting schedule to be in alignment with our hormones. And though I was in the midst of reading her book, I plowed ahead with the fasting schedule that was laid out for me, and I did not listen to my body. I did not, take that pause to quit fasting in the week leading up to my period. That's when I was doing some of my longest fasts. So looking back, I now see exactly why my hormones tanked. So anyways, now fast forward ahead. I'd done all the healing. I'd done the recuperating. I've been eating mostly to satiety for, the months following that recovery. And, I'd love to lose some weight. I've gained weight on carnivore, and I would like to, start to release some of that now. And I've tried several different methods, some macro calorie counting. I've been lifting weights for over a year. That's oftentimes really good advice, is to lift weights, build some muscle. I've maintained where I am at about 170 pounds, which is fine. And I'm good with it. And I love my body and I love who I am and all that it has healed for me. But I still remain curious and I would like to release some of that. And in a recent book club for the Carnivore Wellness community, we have a monthly book club. And in the month of March, we read the book, Why We Get Sick by Dr. Ben Bickman. In it, he talks all about insulin resistance. Reading this book was a light bulb moment for me. I'm still having insulin resistance. And it comes from eating too much protein. I've been eating excess amounts of protein. It continues to drive that hunger. It's a vicious cycle. So I remain hungry. And it to the point where I'd eat several, steaks in one sitting, and I still kind of felt like I could go back for more. So recently on actually April 7th, woke up that morning and I, after the previous 3 weeks, I had been reducing my protein intake to around that 135 grams of protein and upping the fat, allowing myself to eat fat to satiety, oftentimes still exceeding what I needed and kind of seeing the scale start to tip back up. But one morning, April 7th, woke up and I was really hungry. So I ate 2 lamb shoulder chops, like nice big cuts of fatty meat. And then I went back and I made another ribeye, topped it with, some tallow. I put it all in my calorie tracker and my carb manager, and I'd had plenty of food for the whole day. And I'm sitting there looking at my, what I've just eaten, and I'm still feeling hungry. And I just thought, I am never going to get rid of this hunger until I get rid of this insulin resistance piece. So I've got to do something. And just in that moment, I realized, I've eaten more than enough for the day. I'm just going to fast for 24 hours. So this takes me into that accidental first long fast. I just decided 24 hours without eating. My a mom friend reached out. We set up a play date with the kids. I just told him when we got there for burgers, I'm fasting. I'm good. I'm not going to eat. Just didn't eat. So stayed busy for that first 24 hours, and that was really helpful. The next morning I woke up and I just, I kind of thought, I could use a few more hours of fasting. I'm just going to not eat breakfast this morning. Let me drop the kids off. And then I started driving out to a trailhead to go hike. On that drive, I pulled up YouTube and started listening to Dr. Mindy Pell's. And she, in some of her videos, talks about the benefits of doing some longer extended fast. 36-hour fasted, great fast for burning fat. A 48-hour fast, great for resetting dopamine receptors in the brain so that you can actually have an appropriate dopamine response to your food and hopefully not overeat. 72-hour fast, she calls an immune reset. And at that point, your body resets its immune system. You start producing stem cells. There's a lot of deep healing and repair that can take place at 72 hours. The 72 hours was so far off in my mind in that time. I simply thought, okay, I'll go to 36 hours. That's a good fat burning fast. I'd love to kickstart some of that. And then I made it to the 36-hour mark, and it was the evening, and I didn't really want to eat because it was right before bed. And I thought, well, if I just go to sleep, I can just wake up in the morning and then I could eat. So I did that, but then I woke up in the morning and I thought, maybe I'll just go for another hike. Anyways, this continued for about 3 or 4 days, and I just kept pushing it back, and I got to a place where the hunger would quiet down. Anytime I felt hunger, I would put some salt under my tongue, and then I would drink some water, and it would go away. And if the hunger came back, I just repeated the process, and I never felt any hungrier during that fast than I would feel, say, 4 or so hours after breakfast when I'm getting ready to eat lunch. Like, the hunger was the same amount of hunger, except when I was fasting, it would just go away after about, 20, 30 minutes or whatever, and I could carry on with my day. I had really good energy. I had mental clarity. I felt good, and I started seeing the scale decrease, which was a big plus. We ended up, our family went up to a lake house to hang out with some extended family. And I continued fasting. I was busy. I was distracted. I was engaging socially with everyone who was there. And I really didn't feel the need to eat until about day 4. So at about 100 hours fasted, I really started to feel, okay, I'm feeling my energy dwindle a little bit. Feeling a little kind of just like maybe perhaps I should eat. So I consulted Dr. Mindy Pell's book. I had taken it with me. And in it, she talks about, when you're coming up on that ovulation window, your days 11 through 15 of your hormonal cycle, take a break from fasting. And so that's what I needed to know. I was like, okay, I'm coming up on that window. So I quit fasting and I just went back to a regular pattern of eating. And then there's another little window after ovulation where she says, if you want to get in a few more fasts, you can. And I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll just try and do another little fast. I'll try for another little 24-hour fast. Ended up doing 36 hours, which is great. It's a fat burning fast. And then went back to re-eating and did another 48-hour fast. Now, then at that point, I was in the start of the lead up to the start of my cycle. So the last week of my hormonal cycle leading up to menstruation. And during that week, you're not supposed to fast, okay? You need to be eating foods that are hormonally supportive of building progesterone. So I decided, okay, take a break from the fasting. But during that time, I really ate a lot, like a lot. I kind of returned to that place of being very hungry. And, in my mind, I knew I needed to eat enough to support my progesterone. Mindy's, Dr. Pell's information was fresh in my mind. So I ate a lot of fatty meat, like a lot of ribeyes and a lot of New York strips. And, I gained back all the weight I'd lost fasting. All right, totally fine, whatever. I knew I was still getting those benefits. I had gotten the benefits of fasting, so I was fine with that. But I kind of wanted to, continue the fasting and just see if maybe I could continue to tweak a few things. So, I do want to report that week leading up to the start of my cycle was the very first time in several years that I did not experience breakthrough bleeding, which is where you have some bleeding prior to the real start of your menstruation. And that's oftentimes caused by low progesterone. So what that tells me is that in eating, essentially excessive amount of proteins at the right time, I raised my blood sugar enough to support the healthy production of progesterone. And that allowed me to have a nice cycle where I didn't have that breakthrough bleeding in a few days prior to the start of my cycle. So that kind of to me showed me that there is some merit to what she is teaching in her hormonally supportive fasting, videos and methods. And so then after I started my menstruation, hunger naturally decreases. And that first 2 weeks of your cycle, that's when you can do a longer fast. I set out to do a long fast. I wanted to reach the 5-day mark, but I was open to going to 7 or 10 days and just was kind of curious. All right, how far can I go? And so this is moving to that third part where I do that, extended fast, that second extended fast. I ended up fasting all the way to 117 hours. I was 3 hours shy of hitting that 120-hour mark, but I broke it for good reason, and I'll share that in just a sec. But I just wanted to say during that time, it was much easier. I was not hungry. I had great energy every single morning. I went for a multi-mile hike, 4, 5, 6 mile hike. Had good mental energy. I was sleeping well, getting along with my kids, being so calm and mellow, and really in a great fat burning state of ketosis. And I was also seeing the scale go down, which again is wonderful. I haven't seen that scale move since starting carnivore, at least not in any meaningful way that has lasted. So then I got to that day 5, and I woke up that morning and I just felt a little tiny bit lightheaded, which is to be expected when you're fasting. A little salt under the tongue, some water, and then I went for a hike. And the hike was fun and I did well, but I was just a little bit more tired than I had been on previous days. It wasn't quite the same energy level. And when I got home from hiking, I really was hungry. I was very hungry, and the hunger didn't seem to go away with the salt and the water. And then I started to get cold. And that for me was enough to know that I should end my fast. Now, all those things are perfectly reasonable for some fasters to experience when they're fasting, and oftentimes they can push through that and they're fine. But I know myself, I know where I was, and I know that pushing it too far before and kind of ignoring and brushing over those signs did not land me in a good place. So I went ahead and ended it. I decided it's not worth it. I am going to end this fast out of an abundance of caution. I could have kept going. I probably could have kept going to the next day. But just because you can doesn't mean you have to. So I decided to call it. I ended that fast. I feel very good about that decision. And then, interestingly enough, this morning, and so the day after ending that 5-day fast, I actually felt good and satiated with a small portion of ground beef, 4 ounces of ground beef, 2.5 tablespoons of butter, and that has kept me satisfied. I don't feel the need to go have 2 ribeyes back to back topped in tallow in order to satisfy my hunger. So I am very, very hopeful that this fasting and doing some of these longer fasts has been, making an impact on this insulin resistance piece and in lowering my insulin. Dr. Jason Fung and his partner, Megan Ramos, they talk about using these longer fasts that they call therapeutic fasts to lower insulin, and that it makes a difference. And they say you don't have to do this forever, just 3 to 6 months, of therapeutic fasting can really yield these high benefits. So that's what I'm after. I'm not trying to do long fast all the time for the rest of my life, but I am trying to get a handle on this insulin resistance piece because it has been driving a hunger in me that is, number one, super annoying, and number two, driving me to overeat and maintain excess amount of fat on my body that I simply don't need. So I'm hoping that this fasting will be the tool that helps me release that. But I share all of this, just out of with this understanding that, I'm coming up on 2 years carnivore. This isn't for everyone. And this certainly isn't necessarily for the newbie carnivores. Like, get your carnivore lifestyle in place. Work on, your own mindset. Work on eliminating your coping mechanisms before you try and do something more challenging. I mean, it's honestly, the fasting has been relatively easy for me, but it was not easy for me before. So I'm just at a different place than I was. And so I think that's key. And then also I'm doing this in a way that's in alignment with my hormones. So that brings us to part 4. What is my plan to support my hormones moving forward as I continue to fast for therapeutic reasons of trying to lower my insulin resistance so that I can succeed in weight loss and overall just being healthier? I mean, there's so many chronic diseases and illnesses that are attributed to insulin resistance. So I want to get that piece taken care of from a health and healing perspective. So my plan to support my hormones, I will fast in alignment with my hormonal needs. I really think Mindy Pelz is on to a lot of good information in her book, Fast Like a Girl. There's another book by Megan Ramos. I just ordered it. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. It's called Intermittent Fasting for Women. So that's going to be another resource where I'm trying to make sure that I am fasting in alignment with my hormones. Fasting in the early part of my cycle, not fasting around ovulation, not fasting in the week before the start of my menstruation. And then I also will leverage the higher protein during that final week so that I can increase my blood glucose. The body naturally becomes more insulin resistant during that time period. because the body wants more blood glucose so that it can have, so that it can build the higher levels of progesterone. That is how I have come to understand that the metabolic needs of that week leading up to the start of your cycle. So perhaps instead of this time leaning on super fatty meats, where I was spiking the insulin, which then stores everything you eat. So then all the extra fat I was eating alongside those fatty cuts of meat, that was all getting stored. I think that's what led to the regain of weight in the month of April. But now in this month of May, instead, during that last week, I'm going to eat higher amounts of protein to increase that insulin. But I am not necessarily going to include copious amounts of extra fat. I think I will just have, the fatty cuts of meat as is. And I likely will also practice a little more self-restraint around eating around the clock. I mean, I don't need to snack, though I find myself wanting to snack in that window of time because the body wants the blood glucose up, but I probably will just eat more, 2 or 3 specific meals during that time. And still allow the blood sugar to come down a little bit. So hopefully that will help prevent the regain of weight. And okay, just because I know people are interested, how much weight did I lose on that 5-day fast? I started so at the end of my last month's menstrual cycle, so the start of when I started fasting, I was 170 pounds. And I finished my fast yesterday. Yesterday morning, I was at 163 pounds. And then this morning when I weighed, I was at 162. So that is a loss of 8 pounds over the course of 5 days. I'm not so sure that all of that will stay gone. Okay, it probably won't. I think it's normal for me to go back up, but I think I will, at least when I go back up, I think I will stay below that 170 mark, which will be the first time I am below that 170 mark. I'll keep you updated. Again, I am in the process of figuring out what works for me, and I just want to share it because I know how frustrating it's been for me throughout this carnivore journey to hear information here or there and just not be able to get to this answer, to this piece of essentially high protein for some people turns into high sugar in their blood, which stimulates that insulin resistance, which prevents the weight loss, which prevents the full range of health and healing that we can have. So that is where I am. Now, to wrap up, again, this is not for everyone. My initial adrenal issues basically meant that I should not have been fasting. It was very hard. So please don't white knuckle your fast. Please make sure that you are being very careful and start slow. You don't need to start with a 3 or 5 day fast. I mean, I just kind of stumbled into that. It wasn't my intention. I was aiming for a 24-hour fast. So yeah, don't white knuckle it. It may not be for you, and that's totally okay. You don't have to take my advice. In fact, I would caution you against taking someone's advice and applying it directly to yourself without checking in on your own needs and where you are. Really be discerning with the information that you try to apply to your life, especially as you are trying to figure out your way and navigate this meat-based way of eating. The second thing is, this is my N=1 experiment. This is what I'm trying. I've tried a lot of other things. I have tried, doing the eat until you're comfortably stuffed, wait for your hunger to naturally come down. I've tried to hang at 2 meals a day consistently throughout the month. I can't do it. I reach a certain point, usually the week before my period, where I just have to eat more than that. So that wasn't a surefire method for me. I've been weight training for over a year. I go to the gym and I lift some heavy weights. They may not be as heavy as, some people can lift, but they're heavy for me. And I do that consistently. I've also taken steps to lower my stress, journaling, meditation, make sure I'm prioritizing sleep, and just trying to eliminate stressors in my life. Stress is a big one in holding on to weight. Another thing I've done is I've tried tracking. I've tried, playing around with my macros. I have limited my protein and upped my fat, while I'm trying to reach satiety, and that still didn't calm and quiet the hunger. And, in doing that, lowering the protein, it just wasn't enough for me from a dietary perspective. So now I'm at the point of trying fasting to mitigate this insulin resistance. I'm also in a different mindset than I was. I'm not coming from a place of restriction or self-loathing. I've gained the weight, and yeah, I'd like to get rid of it, but also I really love my body, and I'm really grateful for all it has done for me. And if I stay this size forever, so be it. Also, if I stay this size while fasting forever, so be it, because I do still believe that there are a lot of therapeutic benefits that come from fasting. So I'm still a believer. Even if my body wants to stay this size, I'm absolutely fine with it. So that's a totally different mindset than where I was previously. And that self-love journey has been a really big part of my carnivore journey. It's definitely been woven into everything I've done, but I'm in a different place than I was. I also have firsthand knowledge of what those pitfalls of overfasting look like. And so I'm very vigilant about looking out for those and making sure I'm not pushing it too far. That's why I ended that 5-day fast 3 hours before hitting that 120-hour mark. I just didn't want to push it. It's not worth it to me. So, in doing all of this, fasting and exploring these concepts, I've done a lot of learning, a lot of researching, a lot of reading, and just trying to pull from people who are wiser than me. And this has helped me with my mindset in making sure that I am doing something that is healthful for me and that is loving for me. And the mindset is really, really big. So if you're not there yet, that's totally fine. And just because this is what's working for me doesn't mean it's what will work for you. I just want to share this because I think us sharing our stories as carnivores is so important and so valuable and can help others, figure out their own journey as they continue. If you are someone who wants to connect with fellow carnivores and have the opportunity to share your story and your experiences, trust me, there's so much value in that. Please consider joining the Carnivore Wellness community. I'll put that link down below. We have a free platform you can join, hop in on the chats. I host weekly lives where you can ask questions, get answers. There's even a free e-course in there about how to get started on carnivore. If you're new to carnivore, again, much of this video doesn't apply to you, but there's a whole e-course there to help you get started with some great information. And then lastly, there's just a large supportive community there that is this encouragement piece and support piece is so vital for so many of us as we navigate this way of eating. If you want to join the monthly commitment, you can always do that for the cost of less than $1 a day. We do really cool things like read awesome books in book club and have twice a month meetings. We also have 3 weekly meetings where we just get together and chat about our stories, about different carnivore topics, things that, just bring us together and allow us to connect. So if that sounds like it's for you, you're welcome to sign up. You can also come and just join the free aspect of the platform as well. We'd love to have you there. All of your stories, all of your experiences are so valuable. Please comment below. Have you fasted? Do you incorporate fasting? What about intermittent fasting? If you found success with that or not, please share that in the comments below. Sometimes that can really serve as a good motivator or help for others as they're trying to navigate their journeys too. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. I will be making many more videos and I'll keep you updated on if the weight stays off or not. And a lot of other aspects of this new piece of the puzzle that I'm bringing into my carnivore wellness journey. So thank you for joining me. I will see y'all next time.